Are you looking for a new, interesting, and delicious way to serve up rice? Well, I have the perfect solution for you here. This is my baked Italian rice, also known as Riso al Forno. But however you say it, it's delicious. So if you'd like to see how this is done, stick around because it's coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I'm a home cook and amateur baker, and I'm here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now, before I get started, I will warn you that I am a little twitchy today. If you happen to be new here, I have neuropathy and myopathy. My muscles and nerves don't always work correctly, so I'm having a little spasmy issue, but we are pushing through. Dinner has to get on the table, and I'm gonna do it. And dinner tonight is, yes, one of my recipes, but it's for an Italian dish that is called in Italian Riso al Forno, and if you're Italian, pardon my pronunciation. Or I'm calling it Italian baked rice. A little easier to pronounce. So now that we know what I'm making, let's find out what the ingredients are. Here I have some salt and pepper. Those are going to be to taste. I also have my cooking spray here because we are going to be using an 8-inch pan and I will be spraying that. We also have here a skillet I'll be cooking the sauce in, so I will need the cooking spray for that as well. Here I have a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes, and you could buy whole tomatoes and crush them yourself, but why burden yourself with another step? Here I have 1 pound of ground chicken breast, and I did grind that myself. As many of you know, if you've been around here for a while, I grind my own chicken breast because it is so much cheaper than paying an extra $4 or $5 a pound just to have them grind it. And if you want to know how that is done, I did do a video on it a while ago. I'll card that here and link it down below. I also have a few recipes where I used that to make sausages, a breakfast sausage, an Italian sausage, and a dinner sausage. So those are also there. I'll link to that in the description box as well. Here I have 1 cup of arborio rice. Arborio is just a short grain. It's just very small compared to regular rice. It's probably about half the size of regular rice, but you could use a medium or long grain. You'll just need to par cook this a little bit longer, but I'll cover that once we get there. Here I have 1 cup of frozen peas, and those have been sitting out thawing. You want them thawed fairly well. They don't have to be thoroughly thawed, but you do want them fairly thawed. Here I have 1 small onion that has been diced, and that is about a half a cup. If you're using frozen, which is totally fine, just use about a half a cup. Here I have 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese, and I grated it myself. It's not the kind that comes already pre-grated in the shaker can. You could probably use that. I'm not sure how the bites and points work on that, but that also has some things in it that will keep it from clumping, and it may not melt as well as you'd like in here. So I would stick with fresh if you can, but in a pinch, go for the other stuff. Here I have 1 cup of fat-free mozzarella, and that is divided into ½ cup each because one's going to go into one part, one's going to go on the top, so you want that separated. And we're also going to need our cooking spray for that. If you know my little secret about melting fat-free cheese, you're going to need the cooking spray, because you spray that afterwards and it melts just like regular cheese. Here I have 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, and that is about 3 cloves if you want to mince it yourself, but you could do more or less depending on your taste. Here I have 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, and even though we have the crushed tomatoes, the tomato paste is going to do 2 things. It's going to help to thicken up the crushed tomatoes a little bit, but it's also going to give us a deeper tomato flavor from having been condensed into a paste. Here I have 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, 2 teaspoons of basil, and 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. Now the Worcestershire is here because in a lot of these recipes, they would use anchovies to get like a salty, briny flavor. Anchovies are used to make Worcestershire. So this is kind of my sneaky way of getting the anchovies in here, but not having to deal with little fish. Not my thing. All right, so those are all of the ingredients. So let me shuffle a few things around and we'll get started. So first thing, I am heating my skillet over medium-high and I have sprayed it with cooking spray. Now that it's nice and hot, I'm going to turn it down to medium, just so that there's no chance of it scorching. So I'm going to start off with our diced onions, and then we're just going to stir those around and cook these for about 4 to 5 minutes, just until they become translucent. So it's been about 4 minutes, and you can see that the onions have gotten translucent, meaning they're kind of clear. They're not as white as they were. You can see light coming through if you were to hold them up to light. That's what translucent means, is light coming through. So now what we want to do is add in garlic, Italian seasoning, basil, and just stir that through. This is going to allow those dried herbs to waken up, get their flavors going, and you definitely get that smell. It will also let us cook down the garlic a little bit so it's not so bitter. So we're just gonna let this cook for just about a minute. Now what we're going to do is add in our ground chicken breast, and you can obviously get the kind from the store if you want. You don't have to grind it yourself, but it's just so expensive just for them to have it ground for you. I don't understand the reasoning, but we're just going to break this up and spread it around, mix that in with our herbs, onions, and garlic. And now we're going to cook this until it becomes white and is cooked through, and that'll take about 6 to 8 minutes. I will continue breaking it up as it cooks so there aren't giant clumps of chicken cooked together. But 6 to 8 minutes, I'll be back. So it's been about 7 minutes and I've been breaking up any clumps that are too big, but that is all cooked through. And I did want to mention, if you didn't feel like chicken, if you weren't in the mood, you had the bites, points, or calories to spare, you could use some lean ground beef and that would be fine as well. So now what we're going to do is take our tomato paste and Worcestershire sauce and just combine all of this. You want to kind of coat all of the bits of chicken. That's going to help to flavor all of this meat a little bit more and give it a stronger tomato flavor. And it doesn't have to be each piece covered. It doesn't have to be that crazy. You just want to get it nicely spread throughout the chicken. And now that that's all coated, I'm going to take our can of tomatoes and just pour that all in. Now I forgot to mention, sprinkle a little salt and pepper on the chicken as it was cooking. So you can do that as well. And I'm just getting all of the chicken spread throughout our tomatoes. And if you didn't want to make the Italian baked rice, you could stop once we're done with this sauce and use the sauce for pasta if you'd like. Okay, so now we're gonna let this simmer about 15 to 20 minutes because we want some of that liquid to evaporate and we want this to cook through and all those flavors to meld together. But we have a couple of things to do while this is cooking. We're not gonna just be standing idle. We're also going to turn on our oven to 375 degrees and we're gonna be cooking our rice, or par cooking it. I'll explain that in just a moment. All right, so I have my water boiling for my rice. My pot is about 3/4 full. We are not cooking this like normal rice. We're just par cooking it, which is basically partially cooking, because we want to make sure that it is done once it goes into the oven. So I have some water boiling here. I'm going to add in some salt to help salt our rice, and then I'm going to add in the 1 cup of rice and just stir that through. Now we're going to boil this for about 10 minutes, which is, as I said, not the standard way of cooking rice. And I will stir it on occasion just to make sure nothing is sticking to the bottom. We're basically treating it like pasta at this point. So my sauce is simmering over here, my rice is boiling here. Give me about 10 minutes and I'll be back. Okay, so our rice is done. It boiled for 10 minutes. Then I drained it and rinsed it in cold water. That way it won't keep cooking because it's going to go into the oven. We don't want it to get too overcooked. So rinsing that in cold water is going to bring the temperature down and keep it from cooking any further. Now what we're going to do is take our rice and put it into a large bowl along with our peas and just mix those two together just to get those peas dispersed. Now we're going to add in about half of the Parmesan, and I would have done 2 separate bowls as I did with the mozzarella. I didn't even think about it. So just about half goes in here along with 1/2 cup of the mozzarella. And just stir that through. And because there is some residual heat from the rice, it will start to melt the Parmesan and mozzarella just a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to bring over my sauce in my pan, my 8-inch pan, and I'm gonna add about 1 cup of the sauce to the bottom of our pan. And it doesn't have to be overly precise. You just want it to cover the bottom and then just spread that out. This is basically just giving us a little barrier of sauce underneath the rice. Now I'm going to take another cup of the sauce and put it into a bowl because this is going to go on the top. I'll set this over here and bring in our rice again. And now we're just going to add the rest of our sauce into our rice. I would have tried doing this left-handed to get a better overhead view for the camera, but I don't trust my arms today, so I'm doing it with my stronger arm. So now we're just going to toss this through and coat everything in that beautiful sauce. Okay, now bring in our baking dish, and then we're gonna add in all of this rice. And you could, if you wanted, you don't have to use fat-free mozzarella. You could use low-fat, reduced fat, what have you. It's totally your call. I just prefer not spending any extra bites or points if I can help it. And now we're just going to spread this out into our pan, into a fairly even layer. And last but not least, we're gonna put the rest of our tomato sauce on top and spread that out, followed by the remaining Parmesan and the other 1/2 cup of mozzarella. And as you likely know, if you've been following me for a little bit, we're gonna spray this with cooking spray. That little bit of fat in there is going to help this to melt more like natural cheese. And now this is gonna go into our 375-degree oven. I started that going when the sauce was simmering, and it is ready. This is going in for about 25 to 30 minutes until the rice is fully tender. What I will do is dip a fork or a little spoon into the center and just pull out a little bit of rice just to make sure that it is done cooking. 25, 30 minutes, and I'll be back with some deliciousness and those nutrition facts. Okay, there we have it, my Italian baked rice, or riso al forno. It means more literally rice in the oven. Forno is oven. And forno is related to our word for furnace. So, a little tip that you didn't necessarily want, but you got it anyway. And you can see here is in the middle where I took a sample of the rice just to make sure it was cooked through, and it was. Now, if you wanted, you could broil this for a few minutes at the end of cooking just to get a little more color on the cheese if you want, but I think it's perfect as it is. But now we have to let it sit for about 10 minutes for all of those flavors to meld, for everything to settle down, and for it not to be scalding hot when you try to eat it. But that gives me plenty of time to give you those nutrition facts. Now this is going to serve 4. If you needed to make it for more people, you could easily double the recipe and bake it in a 9x13 pan and maybe add about 5 or 10 minutes to the baking time. But you can make it for more, for food prep, what have you, if you want. But the way I did it here, it's serving 4, and each of these servings is going to be 6 Better Balanced bites or Old Blue points. I'm on the Healthy Better Balance plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan, so those are the bites and points that I give. Now, if you were following calories, the calories for 1 serving is going to be 580. It's a little higher than most of mine. Usually they're below 500, but it's well worth the extra 80 calories. And if you were following macros, The fat is 9.9 grams. The saturated fat is 3 grams. The protein is 38.3 grams. Carbs are 88.7 grams. We are using rice here. Fiber is 8.2 grams, and the sugars are 12.9 grams. Definitely a delicious take on a rice dish. And you could, of course, try doing cauliflower rice. I haven't done it myself, but I can't see why that would be a problem. I would probably end up cooking it in a skillet to cook it through rather than in the water, just because cauliflower can give off some water and I wouldn't want to add any extra to this. So that's what I would do, but as I said, I haven't tried that yet. Now you could change out the peas if you're not a peas fan or your husband isn't, Sandy, and use corn or carrots or green beans. I wouldn't use anything much bigger than a green bean, but you could if you wanted. If you chopped up some broccoli florets into smaller pieces, you could also use some broccoli. Now you can store this for about 4 days in the fridge. I might even go for 5, or up to about 4 months in the freezer if you are doing some meal prep. And I do believe I said if you use the longer grain rice, you would boil it for another 2 minutes or so just to make sure that that was cooked through. But that's all there is to making my Italian baked rice. And I hope that you enjoyed this video and this recipe. And if you did, I'd appreciate you doing the usual: like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit that notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. We do have a tag coming up this month. We have another collab video coming up this month for Thanksgiving dishes, and boy, do I have a treat for you there. So hit that notification bell and you'll be alerted whenever anything of mine comes out. Now the recipe for this, of course, will be linked down in the description box. I will also link directly to the blog down there, and I will share the links to the videos for the ground chicken and the sausages I was talking about earlier in the description box. Also down there is my Amazon storefront, Built Bar Rewards, Stretch Rewards, and my social media if you'd like to follow me over there. I have my Instagram and 3 Facebook groups that I'm part of, so check out that description box for all sorts of information. Now before you go, I'm going to serve up a little bit here so you can see what kind of a portion you'll be getting for your 580 calories or 6 bites. And it is definitely worth it because you get quite an ample serving. And you can see how nicely it comes out because we let it sit for a brief time. But there you have it, a nice hearty portion of Italian baked rice. And it is time for us to have our dinner. I hope you'll be having some of this yourself very soon. So until next time, bye.